So my basic contention is that almost everyone in the marketing universe, if you've been in the field for a few years, you are familiar with many of the tools and data sources. Occasionally a new one will pop up, right? SparkToro didn't even exist 20 months ago, but most folks are familiar with most of the tool sets. And therefore, if you want to get a competitive advantage, one of the best ways to do that with tools and data is to apply creative uses for the tools and the data. And so I've tried to pick some relatively common content marketing, social media marketing, PR, digital, even some strategy pieces in addition to tactics that you can use tools to do. And to kick that off, I actually wanted to start with our old friend, Google Trends. So a lot of folks use Google Trends exclusively as a, how popular is a set of keywords, or geographically, where is it popular? And it can do a lot more than this, especially on the big picture strategy piece. So when you are conceptualizing marketing strategy, let's say for a new client or for a new product that your company's rolling out, for a new initiative, or you're just trying to figure out, hey, where are we next going to compete in the marketing universe? I think a lot of times we are asking questions like, do I want to build my marketing engine or my next set of marketing practices on top of content and SEO or PPC, or am I going to do, a lot of social ads or display? Maybe I need to do more with product and positioning and pricing. Maybe it's, influence marketing, sort of getting coverage from sources of influence in a market. But Google Trends can actually kind of help you not just answer these questions, because I think a lot of marketers intuitively get a sense of a market and what to do, but this is a great way to both confirm your suspicions and prove to your boss or client that this is true. Let me show you what I mean. So if when you search in your sector or your client sector for a bunch of unbranded keywords, and that keyword volume generally in Google Trends dwarfs all the branded search terms for like your competitors or your brand name, this means content, SEO, PPC is a superb way to build a great marketing engine. And if that's not true, and a few big brands, right? The opposite is true. A few big brands own the space, right? You search for whatever, Airbnb and vacation rentals is like 1/100th of the Airbnb search volume. Then you're probably going to need to do it on brand, on product, on positioning, on pricing, brand awareness, those kinds of things. And in a space that's not yet known. So like no one's heard of this thing yet. No one knows about this thing. For better or worse, right? SparkToro is sort of in this space where we just have to like educate people that audience research exists, and there's a tool that you can use to do it, and try and build up the practice. This is, this was the same thing I did at Moz in 2003, right? Trying to like build the world of SEO. And so that's problem awareness and coverage by sources of influence. So here's an example. Let's say you are building a new team chat tool, right? You're going to compete with like Microsoft and Slack and all of them. And so you look at all the unbranded search terms, and to be frank, there's not a massive amount of unbranded search volume around even the most popular terms, right? Like we're talking a few hundred searches, maybe 1,000 a day for chat software. 1,000 a month for chat software. So this is not massive. And if you look at this, right, and you see this in like an agency is presenting this to you, or your marketing team or your SEO person presenting this, just be like, wait. I also want to see the brands. Like I want to see how the brands compare, because when you see this, you know that you're not going to win. Let's say you rank number one for every single one of these terms. You're going to do nothing to Slack's market share. You will have less than no impact. This is where I think Google Trends gets really valuable. And unfortunately, I see it being used way too tactically and not enough strategically and functionally in terms of marketing channel. This is what I would suggest that you do. It's also great for proving to a reluctant team or boss or client which channels you might invest in. So you can pop in here and say, hey, we're going to reach far more of our audience by being in Harvard Business Review or CIO magazine. Well, CIO is pretty low actually here. Than we would by ranking around all sorts of topics in productivity and team productivity, right? Which might be another like content play, like, hey, let's go for not chat software, but like team productivity in general, and then we'll build our practice around that, which is a fine way to go, right? I mean, I think lots of companies are building content engines around broad topics and then doing one specific thing in there. That's fine, but you might have better luck being in the publications that already have a ton of the attention, especially at the start of a campaign or the start of a new business. Google Trends, pretty good for this. So see when it says this comparison contains both search terms and topics which are measured differently? I agree that is true. And also I still think the comparison is useful. So I wouldn't ignore the fact that Harvard Business Review is probably getting a ton more direct branded search for their and interest around their publication than team productivity is as a topic. Just keep in mind. All right. Yes. We answered all this. This is just for the... Okay. When you're thinking about this, the influence map, which I talked about on our last office hours, basically what Google Trends is great at is comparing different channels and finding opportunities, as well as looking at the problem discovery versus brand awareness versus further education and solution seeking, and seeing how do those volume sectors compare. That's where I really like using it, and I would advise folks to do the same strategically. Ooh, okay, let's jump into one of my favorites here, SimilarWeb. So let's say that you're in SparkToro, right? And you're building up your list of website targets. For most of you who use SparkToro, this is a very common use case, right? You'll go in to the product, and you'll be like, okay, I'm going to search for my audience, which maybe in this case is IT consultants. I was helping someone with this audience last week. And so they might say, okay, I want, Computer Weekly and CIO.com and Tech Republic and Computer World. Like these are the websites I'm going after for whatever it is, because I'm going to place ads or I'm going to do coverage. If you pop those websites into SimilarWeb, just go to their homepage, don't log in or create a free account. That it's really weird that once you create a free account on there, you get a lot less access than if you're just not logged in. But if you just use the free version, yes, the slides will be made available as well in that email, no problem. Go to SimilarWeb.com, type in one of these websites, right? In this case, I think I put in techrepublic.com. And what we're seeing over here that's really cool is distribution of where their traffic's coming from in terms of social networks, keyword search. So look at this. Do you see how the top keywords that send traffic to them are all way below even half a percentage point? This suggests that what Tech Republic is playing at is a huge long tail in the sector of IT, as opposed to a few big keywords are sending them most of their traffic. And when you see this, again, this is an indication that a long tail content strategy, if you're trying to pull in a similar group of traffic, set of visitors, is going to be needed, as opposed to there's a few big winning keywords. And SimilarWeb is really great for showing you this. You can plug in your competitors, direct competitors, see the same thing. This is free, completely free. Same thing with social networks. I was personally shocked. Look at Tech Republic getting more traffic from Reddit than Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube. That is quite unusual. And why is this? It's because there's a bunch of subreddits. I'll show you a tool around Reddit later, but there's a bunch of subreddits that pay a bunch of attention to them. And then the third one over here that I love is the competitors and similar sites. Since SimilarWeb is essentially using clickstream data, right? So they have a panel of 100 million or so devices all around the world, and they look at people who visit Tech Republic also visit which websites. And these are those. Again, super useful for competitors and for content competitors. They can also help you validate some broad traffic trends. So when you compare, for example, I was looking at These are two websites in the NFT space, of which Amanda knows that I'm not a huge fan. But, Amanda, I'm sure that you've bought pancake swaps and KuCoins from these websites before. I don't know what those are. But
I don't know what those are either.
oh, all right. Well, whew. But interestingly enough, they were super hot. Like there was a bunch of coverage of kind of this world of NFT stuff last fall. And you can see in SimilarWeb that traffic has fallen dramatically. And you can combine this actually with Google Trends and keyword data to see the same thing. So, here's like CryptoKitties in Google Trends, and here's the CryptoKitty website. And you can sort of see like that decline. In fact, if I show it on a bigger scale, you'll see an even bigger decline. I do like SimilarWeb's data around website traffic in addition to Google Trends, because see how the Google Trends chart doesn't exactly show a steep decline, but the SimilarWeb one does. This is because oftentimes keyword search volume in a sector is not the same as total interest in that sector or in that website. And so SimilarWeb is kind of capturing how many total people are visiting this site versus Google Trends, which is just telling you how many people are searching for it, right? And searching for it could mean I'm looking to learn about it, whereas people coming back and visiting again, getting traffic from other sources, you get the idea. All right. You want to take this one, Amanda? I think, what did you use Clearbit with?
Yeah. So for Clearbit, something I was curious about was the just getting more data about my email subscribers for my personal newsletter. So I have a personal newsletter called The Menu, which is, I cover marketing and creativity adjacent topics. So it's not a super defined niche. And then I also don't know who all signs up. Like I don't get a lot of data from my email service provider. So I decided to upload my list into Clearbit, and this was totally free, which was really cool to see. I think it is, we have to check the pricing, but I believe it's free on Clearbit up to like a couple 100,000 emails or something
Wow.
really huge. I do not have a couple 100,000 emails. It's much smaller than that. So I analyzed my email list and I saw all these characteristics, right? So I saw some of the common categories that people worked in were like internet SaaS, mostly B2B though. I thought that was really interesting. And then for industries, a lot of people are in internet software and services, professional services, media. One thing that surprised me was education services. Had no idea that I had subscribers in the education space. And then as far as employee ranges go, a lot of people were mostly in 1 to 10 person companies. That was the main thing. So this probably makes sense in that I thought that I had a lot of solo creators in my email list. I just didn't know that for sure.
Yeah.
So that was interesting to see. And then as far as seniority goes, I got to see that people on my email list range from manager to director to executive. So yeah.
But this
is all free.
if I'm understanding correctly, like big insights out of this might be you have a more geographically diverse group than I would have guessed. Mm-hmm. Like since you're in California, I would have guessed more US and California, and it looks like maybe less than half are actually US. And then, I like you're mostly, if you are trying to target your content, right, you're mostly speaking almost 75% to small businesses, not big ones. And again, almost 75% to, journalists, media, consultants, and, internet tech folks. So what's nice about this is you can send your email list to Clearbit. I didn't realize it was free. That's freaking sweet. And get back this analysis data. And then if you pay, you get sort of even more data on this?
I think so, yeah. I mean, from what I was seeing, it was a little bit unclear what I would get more of if I paid. It just sort of seemed like if my list were bigger, then yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, Clearbit will give you social data. Did you get that back with the free version?
I did not get social data. This was
Yeah.
all
So
the
I think
data that I got. Yeah.
if you
That's
pay, you get
okay.
the social data, right? Which will essentially say like, here are the social accounts of the emails that you've sent us,
Mhm.
which you can then upload to SparkToro and get an in-depth analysis of the audience. And yeah, my recommendation there is use Twitter. That's where you'll find the most matches, both in Clearbit and in SparkToro.
Well, I might do that then.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
You can use the SparkToro credit card. Sweet. Oldie but goodie. So our good friend Mark Mims runs Followerwonk out of Spokane, Washington. And this is one of the weirdest questions that I don't understand why Twitter won't answer for me. I very frequently want to know who are my most influential followers, like the people who already follow me that are very, very well followed, very authoritative, whatever. They're verified accounts or like famous people, what famous people follow, right? This kind of thing. So I plugged in, you can do this in the Analyze an Account tab of Followerwonk. The software looks super old school. The UI hasn't been updated in probably 15 years, but still works like a charm. So I plugged in Everywhereist, Geraldine's account. And look, you can click on, you can go over here and click on 1 million plus or 500K to a million, right? Like people with tons and tons of followers who follow you or follow any account. And boom, there's who follows Geraldine. Terry Crews. Look at that. British Airways. Soledad O'Brien.
Kristen Chenoweth.
She's in the new, on HBO Max. What is that? Station 11, right?
Oh,
I think
okay.
she's the lead actor in that. So, just very,
British
very cool. And
Airways.
you can export all this and then see the connections, right? And get all your data in there. This is pretty nice. Like it's great for a whole bunch of things. On a related note, Amanda, you had mentioned that you can do some similar things with SparkScore and Twitter.
Yeah. So if you check your Spark score or the Spark score of any account, this is totally free. Then you can see their related accounts. So in this case of related accounts, I believe this is people who are people who the person that you searched for, people who they tend to engage with most.
Yep.
So it tends to indicate, if they're in a similar niche or if they are friends or, friendly in some way. So
Yep.
it's a good way. I think it's especially a good way to figure out who to follow in a given niche. Like if you're new to a certain industry or niche, or you're trying to find similar types of accounts, then this is a good tool to get you started.
Yeah, for sure. And that the other thing I was going to say is on Twitter itself, when you go to Twitter and you see on the sidebar, you have to use the desktop version, not the app. When you go to the website, you will see related accounts when you click on anyone's profile. And then you can click see more related accounts, and it will do this similar to Geraldine. And then you can see people who basically have a high degree of overlapping followers, which can also be useful. For example, if you have had success with someone sharing your content, I have done this a couple of times where it's like, oh, somebody tweeted something that SparkToro published. Then I click on their account and I click on similar accounts and I'm like, ooh, those 5 people, I should see if I can get them to share it, right? Because chances are good, this will get another impression in front of my right audience that I want. Also in Followerwonk, again, do you remember? So Twitter Analytics used to show this for free with everyone's account. Like it used to have a nice graph. It would show you like when you got your followers or whatever. And now it's gone. The nice thing is Followerwonk still has this feature. So you can essentially plug in someone's account. I did mine, I did yours, Amanda, I did Geraldine's here just because she had this like very nice spike. So you could kind of see what was happening here. Why was she getting all this traction attention? It was because of a blog post that she had written and, a bunch of people had said nice things about it. But there you go, right? Like I can see what is earning this person their followers, like what are they doing. So for example, when you plug in your account, Amanda, you can see that almost every week you have like one day or like one 48-hour period where you've published usually a thread on Twitter that's done very well, and then that's where your new followers appear to be coming from. And for me, it's historically at least conferences and events. So like when I do a webinar for someone else, I did that webinar for Typeform last week, that resulted in a bunch of people spiky following me, or a podcast, that kind of thing. So pretty slick. The only thing about Followerwonk is, unlike SparkToro or Brandwatch or some of these others, it's very Twitter specific. So, whereas SparkToro might show aggregated data about audiences, you can see here, right? It's like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and YouTube and the websites and yada, yada. And SparkToro is anonymizing and aggregating data, right? So it's basically saying like, okay, people who talk about renewable energy follow these accounts. But sometimes what you really want is, I want editors of publications that talk about renewable energy. And if that's what you're looking for, as opposed to who are the most followed and sort of paid attention to sources in the field, Followerwonk is great for this. It can do that direct bio search. Have you tried to do this on Twitter? It sucks. Twitter search is broken and has been since they launched. I don't understand it. It's really weird that Mark, one guy in Spokane, was like, oh, I can build a search engine for Twitter. I don't know why Twitter can't.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like Twitter search, it only really works well for the individual tweets that you're searching for. Like you can search for an account's tweets based on the minimum amount of likes or retweets. You can search in a given time frame, and that's super useful. But that's it. You can't search actual accounts, and you can't even search the bios of the accounts that follow you in Twitter.
No, it is super, super frustrating. And yeah, so Followerwonk can help solve this. One of the things that I really like, if you're doing a lot of stuff with SparkToro, right? You're trying to find sources of influence, whatever, for advertising or PR or outreach or co-marketing or whatever it is. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to like find that right initial source to identify the audience. In this case, it can actually be really useful to use Followerwonk, find an editor of who talks about renewable energy. For example, this guy with the Irish Times, or this one down here at the Energy Journal, right? Ben Radley. And then you can take those accounts, because you see that they've got thousands of followers, and plug them into SparkToro as my audience follows the social account. That is often a great kickoff starting point. Alrighty, so BuzzSumo. In a lot of ways, weirdly enough, Steve Rayson, who started BuzzSumo, as a friend and colleague, and was a lot of the inspiration behind SparkToro, because the way that he built that company initially, the simplicity of the product, it's now a much more complex product inside the Brandwatch suite, but initially made me really, really love it. And it is still a gold mine, but I feel like, as I've been reading articles about BuzzSumo the last couple of weeks and like looking at how people use it, I'm like, oh man, I feel like there's a lot of missed out on opportunities inside BuzzSumo. And I wanted to highlight just a couple of them, but this product goes really deep. Like if you pay for some of the higher tier subscriptions in BuzzSumo, you can get some very impressive and surprising bits of data. So the most common thing that everyone knows, right, really well, is the content analyzer tool. So, going back to our renewable energy search here, I search for keywords like renewable energy, and what BuzzSumo is doing is it's just looking across an index of, hundreds of millions of documents that are in its index, and the count of social shares, right? So like how many Facebook shares and likes does it have, how many Twitter shares, how many Reddit engagements meaning upvotes or comments on a Reddit post that links to it, blah, 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 Pinterest. They also use links. I think back when I was at Moz, they were using Moz's link index. I don't know if they still are, because I used to see Domain Authority in here too. They might be using Ahrefs or SEMrush or somebody else. But if you check this out, this is useful. Like it's fine. It does its job. when it came out, it was like revolutionary because there was no way to get this data. By the way, fun side note story that someday I hope to tell. I tried to buy BuzzSumo when I was at Moz.
Oh.
But yeah. And we made a bid. They were super interested, and I just couldn't get my CEO, because I had stepped down as CEO at that point. I couldn't get her to do it, which was, I think, a big mistake because BuzzSumo's revenue went crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, but let's ignore that for right now. Maybe please don't tweet that. That would be probably good not to tweet. Just pretend that was a made up story that no one's ever heard before. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
I don't know what you said. The thing.
Yeah, I didn't sign an NDA with Moz when I left. Oh wait, no, crap. But don't sleep on, this is very, very unknown. If you click on advanced search tips, they will show you a bunch of ways to search. And if you scroll down past where the fields are hidden, they'll show you this one called shared by someone. And you can plug in a social account. They only support Twitter right now. It's a little frustrating, but still very useful. You can use that same methodology we talked about with Followerwonk and SparkToro. And look, I plugged you in, Amanda, and what it's showing is over the past year, when you have sent a tweet with a URL in it, which have been the ones that have gotten the most shares from everyone, right, across these platforms. And so, this story from Alex Schultz in the San Francisco Chronicle, bam, look at that, about Annie's mac and cheese. The Mad Men, Furious Women, which also appeared at the top of my list as one of the articles that I shared that was the most shared. So again, this can give you a sense of what are people who are having success in a social arena sharing that's performing really well for them. This is both content inspiration, social media sharing inspiration. You can even dig through this for opportunities to reproduce content, or to find things that if you were to update or deliver new data on or whatever, that you could reach out to these sharers and then say hey, we got a new version of this, which I know is a very common PR content tactic these days and often quite successful. The comparison report is also dope. Again, it's weirdly hard to find. I remember that they had something like this, but they've changed the UI, and so it took me forever to find it again. But what they'll show you is when you type in topic-based keywords, right? So comparing renewable energy, content that contains renewable energy, blog posts and articles and all that kind of stuff, versus ones that use green energy. And what's crazy here is the graph might throw you off, right? The graph might make you think, oh, there's more engagement on renewable energy. But that's not what you care about. If you're a content marketer, a social media marketer, PR person, producer of any kind, what you want is lowest competition to highest ratio of shares and engagement. And that is green energy, because look, green energy, less competition, far less competition, and the average engagements is 85 versus 82. I mean, if I were going to pick a topic in the renewable space to center more content around, I would probably go after green energy types of keywords more than I'd go after renewable energy stuff. I think this is because green energy in general is speaking to a broader consumer group. When I hear green energy, almost everyone knows what that is. When you hear renewable energy, it's a little more of a technical term. I think it probably appeals to insiders a little more than it does to broad groups of folks. Plus, 1/3 the number of articles analyzed. You can do this with any subject matter. It's a nice addition to your keyword and content and topic research. And yeah, you can follow these and track them too. I also love their alerts. Sorry?
That's super interesting. That's a nice, sort of counterintuitive finding that, yeah. Huh. Yeah. So looking at the average engagements.
It was kind of cool. I did this with audience research and audience intelligence, which were the two, obviously audience research, a way better bet because there's just way more interest. Oh, sorry. This is BuzzSumo, which is BuzzSumo.com. And again, the slides will be sent out. I have all the links to the, inside the document here. So you'll get those too. I also love BuzzSumo's alerts. I used Talkwalker and Mention and Google Alerts, which was terrible. And I obviously, built Moz's Fresh Web Alerts, which was never invested in enough to be all that great. I think BuzzSumo is as good or better than any of them. And I get a lot of stuff in there. Just this morning, before our call, or before our webinar, I got a digest of a bunch of people who'd published some stuff. There was someone who had published something very incorrect about some SparkToro research from a couple of years ago. And so, I tweeted at them, was like, hey, what gives? Like, what's going on here? So again, it's for all sorts of things. It's reputational, it's brand tracking. You can track your competitors. You can track broad topic matter. So if you wanted to plug in something like, hey, I'm really interested in what's going on with the world of audience research, which is what I searched for here, right? I can see that, okay, there's something from the Ad Council. There's some SaaS stuff in here. There's something about audience research for with some broadcast stations in Ukraine. So you kind of get a sense of like what's going on in the space, who's talking about the topic, what are they saying about it, etc. So I have used this in the past. I especially used it before you joined SparkToro, Amanda, when I was the only person creating content, to do a lot of like, oh, that's interesting about this subject, but I disagree. And, here's my opinion on it, which did well for me, especially LinkedIn seems to be a great place to disagree with articles that are popular. I've had a lot of success with that. Another super extra free tool, completely free. It's subredditstats.com. And the guy who runs it is a saint because he just gives all this data away completely for free. So this is from Pew's social media, survey research where they like call people up and text them and whatever and ask them if they're using various things. And Pew's methodology, pretty solid. They're one of the better survey companies in the US. So you can see this like trended data. They've been asking these questions for years. There you go. YouTube and Reddit are the only two social networks that are growing. How is YouTube a social network though? Like that really annoys me, I think.
Yeah, I still struggle with that too. I mean, just because you can post comments and reply to comments, I feel like that doesn't necessarily mean it's social.
Yeah, so. I mean, that isn't the New York Times social. You have an account and you can comment and you can see other people's comments. So I don't know. Yeah. The comment section does not make a social network, in my opinion. I think it's a content platform. And yes, I agree with you, Laura. I think it's more of a search engine, to be honest. But whatever. It's fine. I think that what's great about Reddit is it is nearly as big as Twitter now in terms of usage in the United States, at least, and growing rapidly overseas as well, outside the US. And subreddit stats, basically, if you go to their homepage, you'll see just a whole bunch of data about different subreddits, and you can type in any one and see all of these statistics, right? So it'll show you top submissions, and it'll show you number of subscribers and how that subscriber growth has looked over time. Yes, subredditstats.com, exactly. And it will tell you about, comments per day and posts per day and all this kind of stuff. So you get a sense of how active is the community, how much have they grown, where has that growth come from, is it growing recently? Subreddit stats will also show you communities that are on the rise. Just be warned, a lot of the ones that show up are often not really safe for work. So just use your smart filter to go through. I clicked on a few because I was like, oh, what's that? And then, you get to it and you're like, oh, well, that is great. I didn't need that in my browser history. Yep. So again, apologies for the screenshot, the unfiltered screenshot, but it will show you subreddits that are growing fast. So you can be like, oh, okay, there's a lot of people who are, joining whatever Ukraine conflict in Ukraine. There's a whole bunch of video game stuff that's very popular there. You can see NFT stuff. You can see TV shows that are popular and growing in popularity in communities around that. CryptoKitty growing. Look at that, despite the... So this is like the Reddit sub community. And as you go through, you can look by year instead of, day and week and month, that kind of thing. When I look at Reddit communities where I want to participate, I especially did this a couple years ago when we were starting SparkToro and kicking off the launch of the product. One of the ways that I did it was basically this: search Google, right, for renewable energy site :Reddit, right, to find subreddits that are like around the topic, and then plug those in to subreddit stats. Because subreddit stats it doesn't have a search engine built in to where you can search for topics. But this is pretty great. And then figure out which ones sort of pass muster. So for me, it was like, look, if you're not getting 50 comments or engagements per day, I feel like it's probably not worth it for me to join and participate. Like, it's just too small a community. It's not going to have a big impact. So that was kind of my bar. And then I was looking for ones, especially interested in ones where the growth curve looked very high, like this renewable energy one, right, where the growth curve at the end there recently has looked really interesting. And then, join, participate, listen, comment, chat, that kind of thing. And I did this in a few marketing communities, and even just like, having repeated comments and listening to what's going on, and then again, sharing spiky opinions, and it all works really well. All right. So Amanda, thank you for reminding me that we should probably also include this new tool called SparkToro.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fun name. Probably, they probably have a huge staff.
Probably. I think it's like a 50-person company.
All three of us agree. So one of the interesting uses, I assume most of you have used SparkToro for lots of the common use cases around like PR and outreach and content and that kind of stuff, content marketing, social media marketing. But next time you are doing any type of content that includes a guest, so you're writing an article and you're going to have guest contributors participating in it and sharing opinions, or you're running a survey, you need guest contributors to review, that kind of thing. What's the website? For SparkToro. You know what? I love our community here on Crowdcast. It really. Sorry, you were asking about the subreddit one. I thought you were asking for the SparkToro one. Apologies.
I have it here. SubRedditstats.com.
Yeah. So who should you pick to contribute to the pieces that you're putting in there? SparkToro is actually one of the best answers that you can possibly have for this. And the reason I like it so much for this is because it essentially tells you these are the people that the most folks in this field pay attention to, right? So if you want to reach the most people in renewable energy space, these are who you would want to be participating, sharing. This is who people in that field think are authoritative. And SparkToro has this filter, which is very uncommonly used, but I do highly recommend it. It's not perfect, but it is pretty darn good, where you go to account type, right? You click on filters, you go to account type, and you say individuals instead of business. And what that will show you are mostly human beings. I think, in this case, all human beings. And this is a filter that Casey built that essentially looks at, do they use first person language and sort of first human name and that kind of thing. And you can see, right, these people, Christiana and, Greta Thunberg, right? Super famous. You're probably not going to get her. Also, she's still a minor, right? So maybe not the right person to reach out to. But Christiana for sure, James Murray and David Roberts and Damien Wright, like the environment editor for The Guardian, DMs are open. So these are the kinds of people that you would want to contribute to your piece about renewable energy, to be a guest on your podcast, to come speak at your webinar, to come to your in-person event as those open back up, all that kind of stuff. I also, embarrassingly, so I did this for SparkToro. One of the biggest things that I think everyone should do with their like first 3 SparkToro searches is analyze your own social account. Twitter works best, LinkedIn works pretty well, Facebook works kind of well, Instagram works less well, and then all down the line. We connect all of them up though. So for example, if you plug in your Twitter account and we know about your Instagram that is connected to it, it will analyze all the audiences across all the social accounts that we know about. So you go and type in my case, I did our company, SparkToro, and it's showing me hashtags that are popular with our audience, like the people who follow SparkToro on, in this case, it's LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, because we don't use our Instagram. And Amanda, we haven't created content around any of that. I should. I mean, there's no reason for me not. Like, I have a talk from a couple years ago about branding stuff and audience research, and I should totally just turn it into a blog post and publish that. Maybe we should do that for our next office hours. Like, PPC, like, I could clearly do something on SEM and paid search ads and using audience research for that. And again, just missed opportunity. This is one of those things where...
And the e-commerce one, by the way, I want to say, like, e-commerce, I'm like, oh, that's an obvious one, because I've also done a bunch of webinars or podcasts in the e-commerce space. So now I'm like, oh, darn it, why don't I have some owned content, like a blog post for that?
Yeah, exactly, right? So, and when you're talking about content gap, almost everyone uses data from Ahrefs and SEMrush or Moz to do it from a search keyword perspective, rather than a topic interest perspective. And that's where SparkToro can jump in. This is something where even inside BuzzSumo, you can't quite get at this because you can't search by audience. You're searching by topic. And so this would be just kind of a beautiful way to get at that content gap analysis that so many digital marketers are doing right now with purely search data. Also, this one was Amanda's idea. She suggested to me last night at like 10:30 p.m. And look, still made it into the slide deck, baby. Oh yeah, because I am a night owl. Also, poor Geraldine has whooping cough, so it's really been making late hours a thing. Well, we think so anyway. That's what her doctor thinks. But so ad targeting. So let's say I'm Greenbyte here, right? They're a software business in the renewable energy space. They essentially, help people do asset and energy management through their platform, so you can, do cost savings around your production. So you can plug, your account in. I plugged in Greenbyte AB, which is one of their social accounts. I think it's their handle on Instagram and Twitter. And small sample size, right? We don't know about a ton of people who pay attention to them because they don't have a huge social presence, but it will show you exactly the YouTube channels that you can, that are followed by that audience, which is great because I don't know if you've tried to use YouTube advertising inside of Google Display. You have to set up conversion tracking to start it, but it is, they don't suggest channels that they think your audience pays attention to. It's very annoying. Like, you have to manually plug them in, which I find that kind of ridiculous. And I think part of that is, Google and YouTube just being like, oh, just give us the money and let us do the targeting. No, do your own targeting, do your own research, and your results, compare your results, right? Mm-hmm. Who knows? Maybe their algorithm will be better for you. Probably what I've seen and heard is most folks in display find that when they narrow the audience to people they really want to reach through sources like this, they get way better results. In this case, right? Like, this is the American Clean Power Association, who has a bunch of surprisingly popular videos that I think are watched mostly by people in the energy sector. What's great about that is that's exactly who Greenbyte is trying to reach, right? They want to reach, folks in production and in leadership roles in the energy sector. And you can see, like, this green energy group, they're quite small. I bet these ads are super affordable. I don't think there's a whole lot of bids on their channel because I don't think Google lets you target really well. So there you go. Same with Twitter advertising. In fact, Twitter advertising, look there. So when you click recommendations, I don't know if you've tried this, but the recommendations are, they're not great. Like they use the keywords in your ad essentially to analyze. I don't like it at all.
And I think if you don't know, which audience you're targeting, let's say you're an agency, right? And so you don't deeply know every single niche for your clients. You might see this and go, okay, this seems fine. This looks relevant. But if you do know a niche really well, or you have deep expertise in industry, you probably see this and go, oh, no, these are all wrong. Like it's not these.
Yeah. I mean, they wanted, no surprise, right? They wanted SparkToro to advertise against followers of a bunch of like search engine stuff, because many people who started following SparkToro years ago followed it after I left Moz and started that company, this company. And so, they have this like misidentified sector for the recommendations. So yeah, in this case, you can use follower lookalikes. So you basically take things like this or like this, right? Like this, and then you plug it in right there, and you can add a whole bunch of them, right? I added renewable energy world and solar industry and green tech media, right? All the things that are most followed by this audience. There you go, right? Like that's where I'm going to get the people that I really want to reach and I want to be targeted, especially because Twitter ads are fairly expensive. So, yeah. All right, final piece here. Don't forget, you can combine these. I know I talked about a couple of combinations earlier, but one of my favorite combining techniques, BuzzSumo. Find trending articles in a space like cybersecurity. Then go, basically look for content that earns lots of social traction. And then you go to Google Trends and you plug in, right? Because these are the topics that people are writing about. This is like the subject matter that it's in. Of course, a lot of it is around, Russia's aggression against Ukraine. And then when you plug in cyber attacks, Russia, Ukraine, and United States, what you see is, oh man, people are a lot more interested in, concerned about. There's a ton more volume around those two countries than the US right now. Right? Let's go see what you want to cover if you care about SEO, right? If that's your primary focus. And then you can go to SparkToro and find sources of influence that are likely to help the content spread, help it get coverage, run ads again, right? If you're doing promoted content and have some budget to put ads behind it, which audiences should you promote those to? Where do you want to do co-marketing with? You combine these sources and you can do some very, very impressive kinds of digital marketing across, social, content, SEO, PR, you name it. Alrighty. I think the recording will be available and the slides will be available, and we'll send those out to everyone right after this. But now we've got maybe about 10 minutes for questions.
Awesome.